Just 2 months into the new A-League season and the dust is starting to settle. The shadows are retreating and the haze is beginning to clear. The contenders and the pretenders are coming into focus as the path ahead becomes a little more clear. The A-League will always have surprises waiting impatiently around the corner, but 7 rounds in, we can speak to a few of those unanswered questions we were all opposing at the start of the season. Will Auckland be any good? Turns out, yes, they're not bad at all. Will the Mariners finally be able to start a season strong? Well, no, but there are signs of life. Who are the real challengers for the toilet seat? Who's making us wish we had relegation? And is the Kiwi Derby becoming one of the hottest tickets in town? On this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. My name is Lachlan Avil, and joining me today is Will Booth. Will, I believe it would have been quite a miserable drive for you up to the Central Coast on Sunday afternoon. Weather conditions far from ideal.
Yeah, I had to swap from the motorbike to the car last minute. But yeah, no, it was not a great drive up there. It's a bit treacherous at times, but yeah, no, it kept a bit of the crowd away, I believe, as well, which was not the best vibe, but a great result that kept spirits high for the side.
Yeah, fascinating. I mean, we'll get into it in a bit more depth, but for all we've talking about the Mariners to only have one loss at this stage of the season is quite something. Jacob Stevens as well. Hello to you.
Hello.
Well, I thought we'd start off tonight with something slightly different. I'm going to ask you both a question, and that's who caught your eye. So a single player with a standout performance. Will, let's lead off with you.
Yeah, definitely. If we're talking about this round specifically, then it has to be Alou Kuol for me. I mean, broke his duck of 16 games without a goal, and definitely, single-handedly got the Mariners the win there. And I don't know. I think we've just seen him. That was him playing to the best of his ability, and what he does best is just kind of throwing his body at these crosses, and finally, got on the end of a couple, which was really good to see. And he's the kind of player that, he'll be frustrating at times, right? His finishing is probably not up to where it needs to be for, a starting striker even in this league. We saw him get a little move to Germany and then come back to the A-League, but he can't, you can't say that he doesn't work hard. He's always putting his body on the line, as I said, and he's always just a workhorse for the side. I don't think he really goes missing in many games. He's always having moments in different areas and definitely contributing in different ways. And it was just good to see him, net a few right this time. He's got his reward in the end, but. As I said, it can be frustrating and watching him kind of miss the easy ones and score the hard ones. But hopefully these 2 goals really just give him that kick of confidence that he needs.
I think it was 16 games without scoring for Alou Kuol. So big for him to get on the score sheet again. Jacob?
Yeah, mine is somebody else who managed to get on the score sheet twice as well, and that was Yonatan Cohen for Melbourne City. We've sort of been asking over the last few weeks, who's going to be the one in that City side to score the goals, right? That they're obviously being plagued by injuries in the front line. Their first choice striker out, second choice striker out, third choice striker was out. He's kind of come back now, but it seems like perhaps Cohen has sort of found that little bit of confidence. He had some really good off the ball movement, I thought, in this game. Okay, yes, it's against Brisbane, and defensively they've been quite poor, but that second goal that he scored in particular was an absolutely beautiful finish into the top corner, first time. It's everything that you want from an attacking player to be able to hit those so well, and that's exactly what he did. So the fact that he's finding himself in the position to be able to do that. He seems to be linking up quite well now with the other attacking players in the City side as well. He's finally starting to get into the system. That's a good sign, I think, for City, because they've been really struggling in that final third a lot this season. And now it seems like perhaps they've actually found somebody who's going to be able to take hold of the game a little bit and try and shore things up while they let some of the more experienced and regular players recover from injury. So I was really impressed with his performance, and I think that's going to be a huge boost for City.
On the other side of Melbourne, I'm going to go to the Victory and pull out Zinedine Mishash. I think he's had a relatively slow start to the season, especially compared to, his opening goal in the Big Blue last year. He kind of really drove in like a truck to start the season and to start his campaign in the A-League. But he's been a little bit slow, and just over the last couple of weeks, you've seen a couple of those more kind of outlandish touches and flicks and stuff, starting to come off. They're kind of landing to his teammates. And then in this game, of course, the solo goal, exceptional against Perth Glory. Just the way he could drop his shoulder to the right a little bit and just create that inch of space. There's not a lot of players in the A-League that can do that well. And, his finish of that goal was exceptional. Probably should have had a second late on in the game as well. Blasted one over the bar. But good to see him coming back into form. But, of course, the game of the week and the highlight of the round was the Kiwi Derby, another intense and feisty game for Mark II of the Kiwi Classico, if people are actually calling it that. I highly doubt there's too many people outside of this podcast. Maybe we should ditch it as well. We'll see how it lands. But more records for Steve Corica. They did become the new longest start to the season in an A-League sense without conceding a goal. But they didn't finish the game that way. Chiefy did manage to get one past them. But again, it was an Auckland win and they still sit top of the A-League. Still perfect record. Quite a remarkable run for the Black Knights.
Yeah, amazing, and obviously that record had to come to the end to an end at one stage. So yeah, fitting that it kind of came in this big clash with a lot of eyeballs on it. So just a really another impressive performance, and I just want to talk about Corica kind of overall, and I think I was thinking about his time at Sydney FC, and there were complaints about certain things and his certain style of management and not really giving enough chance to the youngsters and kind of not playing really any kind of innovative kind of football, maybe a bit rudimentary and kind of boring to watch from what Sydney fans had gotten used to over the years. They were used to playing this front foot style and kind of dominating teams, but Corica is the manager that sets his team up in a way that they will grind out results, or they won't look overly flashy, but they all will know their responsibilities and they will all just execute. And I think he's the perfect kind of manager for a project like this, where they come into the league, you make those experience signings. It's nothing flashy, and that's why they've hit the ground running, is that it's just not simple in a way. The football's not simple in a way that it's a negative thing. It's just he has kept it not too many instructions, but the players, they all just have their roles. They all know how they try to score. They know the types of goals they want to score. They're threats. They're a threat from set pieces. They've got plans for every phase of the game, but just nothing. They're not overcomplicating it at all. And so I think Corica's really done well and kind of the perfect manager, which has probably surprised us for this kind of setup. And I don't know, there's been maybe a small sample size of, there's not that many teams in the league. We don't see these managers often in different scenarios having to come in and have kind of different styles of squads, right, to attack these games with. But with Corica, we've seen, the distinct difference in how, maybe he doesn't go too well, and he gets some results in silverware with Sydney FC, obviously, but the football, became stale in the end. But, and then we see him shine with Auckland. So it's interesting to me to see, the dichotomy of success with these different types of squads. And I think it's just something we haven't been able to see too much before.
Do you reckon, Jacob, that Hiroki Sakai getting forward on the right, crossing to the opposition to put it into their own net was part of these simple instructions from Corica? Because the goal that went in, the opener here, sparked, quite an astounding resemblance to the first ever goal that Auckland scored, that own goal against Brisbane as well. The exact same run, the exact same side of the pitch, I think. A scenario. It is quite crazy to see that.
Well, it worked the first time, lads, so just keep at it and we'll get another one at some point. So, no, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if part of the game plan was to get Sakai high and forward early and to be able to put those balls in the box, because, yes, okay, obviously he's generated 2 goals from that through own goals, but the delivery that he puts on the ball is really, really good from that area anyway. And I think that that's a key part of their attacking game plan, is obviously that wing play that Corica has always sort of been quite good at using his wide players. Here, being able to use your fullback in such an advanced role, I think just opens the game up a lot more. And Sakai, with the experience and the know-how and the technical ability, it's always going to be a threat when he gets on the ball in those areas. But I mean, I think that's the thing with Corica, right? And Will kind of touched on it. And this idea of simple instructions. He likes to let his players play. Yes, okay, he can be quite rigid and structured and he likes to have good systems in place, but he also knows when to let players do their thing. And, that's why he got success at Sydney, because he was able to to let players like, a Milos Ninkovic, for instance, right, really shine in the center of the park and control the flow of the game and things like that. And here it seems to be Sakai. He gives Sakai a lot of freedom up and down that wing. And it clearly pays dividends because he's getting involved in the goals and he's really generating a lot of attacking chances. So I think Corica's quite smart in that respect, in that he does give a little bit more freedom. And it means that, he has fewer instructions to give out and they are a little bit simpler. But if it works, it works. Obviously, we've seen a lot of, or at least I've seen a lot of criticism on social media that, he's walked in and he's been given another great squad, so of course he's going to win, sort of thing. But you can have a great squad, be a terrible coach and get no results from it. You have to be at least equal to your squad to be able to get the results that are expected here. And, the fact that it's not just an undefeated start, it's they've won every single game, they've conceded a single goal. It's really a testament to the way that he and the club have been able to go about things, because to come into a league as a new team, fresh squad that's never played together, but to have them playing such good football, I think that's really impressive. Obviously, is there more that they could do? Probably. I don't think that they've actually quite turned it up to 100 yet. They do still look to be. There are little phases of play where I look and I think that's, make a tweak here or there and that wouldn't happen. And there's a couple of times they give away the ball and I think, was that really the best thing to be doing in that situation? And those are kinks that will iron out. So, I think honestly, I could see them getting even better as the season progresses, which I think is a pretty worrying sign for the rest of the league.
Well, it was interesting. Chiefy spoke before the game and perhaps suggested that they'd had a little bit of luck so far in their run-in. They've played a lot of games at home, had a couple of fortunate goals scored. And then Steve Corica, came out after the game and disputed a couple of those claims. Have a listen to this.
I think they're there for the taking. I think they've been very lucky, to be fair, the last 4 weeks or the last 4 games. They're very vulnerable, I think. I think as well, when you've only travelled once, you get a bit of momentum. I'm not disrespecting their defensive side. I think they're a very good team. They're well structured, but I think there is a lot of vulnerability there.
Yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed, to be honest with you, with Chief. He mentioned a couple of things in the media which, a little bit disrespectful to our team. That they were there for the taking. We've been lucky. We haven't been lucky. You need a little bit of luck, obviously, to win games, but we've won all 6. So, you don't get lucky by doing that. There's, the process you have to go through. Obviously, we've had a few home games early on, but at the back end of the season, we still have to play the same amount of games away from home. So, and I don't make the rules. I don't do the draw. So, yeah, well, I pinned it up on the wall to make sure the players saw it because, we haven't been lucky. We've been working hard for these wins. We've been playing good football.
Well, look, first, what do you make of those comments? Because, as Corica said, you do need a little bit of luck to win games of football. I don't know if Chiefy's comments verged into the line of disrespectful, but also we were having this kind of conversation about the Sydney Derby a couple of weeks ago and the onus on players and coaches to come out and kind of, build up the rivalry a little bit. I think it is a good thing that at least this kind of discourse is happening.
Yeah, I really like this dynamic. I think it doesn't. I don't think Chiefy crossed the line. I think it's good to fire your own players up and kind of give them a chance, right? Like I think Chiefy believed exactly what he said. He wasn't trying to play any games, and he did, see that the game was maybe winnable for his side, and he backed his team to exploit, exactly what we're talking about. Maybe how Auckland are pretty simple. I think Chiefy is maybe, somebody who overcomplicates things at sometimes with his knowledge. So maybe I do think he did, believe that he could pick Auckland apart here, but it's just a shame they couldn't back it up. But yeah, there is this common thread of things being pinged up in changing rooms. I don't know how much space they have on the walls. It seems like every team's got like a little collage put together of every comment everybody makes, and there's always somebody said something. But this is the stuff that gives depth to the league and makes makes these matchups exciting. So no, I think he's well within his right to speak like he did, and I agree with both of them in the way that with on Corica's side, I don't think they've really been lucky. The only game where I think they have been lucky was the Sydney FC game. Right, we have the penalty call or the non-penalty call for Sydney. We have Pinecker's handball. Maybe he caught it on his way to knock it down to himself. So that would be the only kind of game where I'd say there was a bit of luck involved. But, that's football. None of those things that happen in the game are in Auckland's control. It's not, it's not anything they've done. So, no, that's just part and parcel of it. So, no, I back these comments and definitely added a bit of, fire to this already fiery affair, which has been great already twice in the league so far. I mean, you can have your criticisms of that in its own right kind of thing, but no, it's been good so far, and yeah, it makes for good viewing.
We love the fire. We also like the banter that has been going between these two clubs. Yeah. I want to throw a bit of a flag on the play on this one, though. So we spoke last week about the fact that they'd found a couple of extra ways to sell some tickets up on the hill for this game and bump up their official capacity. Turns out the official attendance number that was given on the day was 100% of that capacity, a crowd of 26,253, which breaks the record for a regular season A-League game in New Zealand by one. Yeah. And that was, of course, the Derby version one just a month ago. I do not believe for a single second, Jacob, that there were 26,253 people in that stadium. I think I don't know what the rules are in terms of what you're actually allowed to say. And some people would maybe say tickets sold, but you got to actually get people through the gate is what I would think. But then are you really tracking absolutely everyone that scans a ticket? I don't know. But another little bit of banter, another page to add to the chronicles of the Kiwi Derby.
Yeah, wouldn't be surprised if Wellington just start making up their crowd numbers from now on at every game. As we had 50,000 people there. Yeah. It was,
it's two to a seat. Yeah.
Yeah. No, in terms of how they measure crowd numbers, I think that's a mystery to all of us, right? And unless any of us happens to become, the part of the management of a stadium or something, I'm not sure we'll ever probably find out. I think it's we know for sure that some do it based on ticket sales and some do it based on actual attendance, but then here it's a bit of a mystery because I don't believe there was that many people in the stadium on the day. Was it a complete sellout even though they opened up the extra tickets? Do we know that?
It was definitely sold out, yes.
It was definitely sold out. So they could just be going off of tickets sold, in which case perhaps a little bit of little misleading figure there. But you're right. It adds a little bit more to it. The fact that it's literally just one more than the previous crowd. It's everything you did plus one, we're better than you by one. We got the win over you by one goal. We had a bigger crowd by one person. It's that level of pettiness that's quite funny. And that's sort of what we were talking about, right? It might have been on the last episode with the sort of uniqueness of this rivalry where there's perhaps not quite the hatred that some of the Australian games get, but it's really petty, right? And you can tell that people really care about it because they're going to such lengths to make sure that they're always getting one up. And I kind of love that because you get the comments from the coaches, the two of them going at each other about, these little remarks that coaches make week in, week out in press conferences, but because it's the rivalry game, it's the bit that gets picked out. I really find it quite entertaining. And, I'm hopeful that what this does is it continues to support football in New Zealand, because obviously the Phoenix have been through some tough times. There was a point where were they even going to continue to be in the league? And now they've got a direct rival who are doing well. They're doing well. They're getting great crowds out. I think it's really setting an example of the way to go about things for some Australian clubs, right? These two teams really well embedded in their community. Auckland already, right? They're a brand new team, but they've already done a lot to appeal to the people of Auckland, right? And yes, okay, it helps that that's an area that's been wanting a football team for a while, and they obviously had their failed opportunities. Failed opportunities at the start with poor management, etc., poor on-field performance, but they're nailing things at the moment. With Auckland, and I think that what's perhaps some of the rest of the clubs in the league need to do is look at the way that these two clubs have gone about really building these passionate fan bases, because the crowd there, okay, it might not have been the 26,253 reported, but it was a fantastic turnout. It was a great turnout for the first one as well. I'm just really hoping that we can see this continue, because there's sort of shades almost of the Western Sydney Wanderers and when they first came into the league, right? a really passionate fan base. The club has good ties to the community, and they're getting good results. So hopefully, you can sort of avoid some of the let's call them potholes that the Wanderers had in those early years, with the fan base, that things can stay smooth, because I think there's the makings of a really good rivalry there in New Zealand, but also of two really, really good football clubs moving forwards, which I think the league really needs.
I don't know if you guys noticed, but on the broadcast, I think this was another jibe, right? But there was a big W in the back right corner of just over the field, like just behind in the corner. There was a big W. Was it the W they stole from Wellington? I don't know. I don't know if that was intentional, but it was there. I thought it was funny. Also, the yellow fever had the kind of the stripes of the banner. It was like, the King's dead, the Knights dead, Auckland FC question mark, just setting it forward. But yeah, great banter. I just want to point out as well, for clarity's sake, I do believe they could get 26,000 people interested in going to an Auckland game. But if that is like your health and safety limit, there's always going to be a couple of people that, get ill the day of the game, have other plans, and just can't rock up. So to get 100% of your capacity, I'd throw a couple of question marks out there. But clearly very well supported, which is great. Let's go to Sunday afternoon. Will, the Mariners, surely they're not doing it again. They can't. They've had such an even worse start this campaign, and they've beaten the team that a lot of us had pegged for the premiership and the championship at the start of the year, Sydney FC. Of course, there is the asterisk of the red card in there, but they were tested. They went up 1-0 up. Sydney FC brought it back to 1-1, and they were tested again, the Mariners. But watching that live, I thought their heads were going to drop again when that goal fell in, but they didn't. They actually kept pushing. We expected a response after Mark Jackson's words midweek, really criticising his players, and they showed up and they got the winner, and they get another win on the season.
Yeah, it's the red card just kind of, as you said, puts an asterisk on it, and it just kind of makes it hard to analyze. Are they back? I just don't think you can call it yet. Like, you just need a bigger sample size than what we've seen. And, without maybe the challenge of the Asian Champions League on them, because that's pretty much done and dusted for them now. I feel like they can maybe, the floodgates are open a bit for the league, and they do have a couple of tasty looking fixtures in the next couple of games. So I definitely think they could pick up the points. But yeah, to take it back to this game, I mean, it was the way they played that made the red card happen as well. It was a great ball over the top from Nathan Paul, and it was they were finding the spaces and the chances in this game, right? They could have scored before that in the first half. They were probably on top in the first half. I think Sydney were restricted to some pretty basic chances that Perth Glory just had covered, right? Like, it was really good cover defense on a lot of, even when Sydney broke away with Klamala or, whoever it was, the defense was set up in a way that they just had those shots from really not dangerous areas. And Perth Glory made a couple of good saves, but look, routine as well in a way. So Sydney didn't really look that threatening, and I think that's even before the red card, and that was in part due to a really structured performance from the Mariners. So I don't know. Sydney got back into the game pretty fortunate circumstances. I think Lolly kind of just poked that one on the ground, and then it came out to Klamalo, who hit it really well and first time and netted there. But we saw the Mariners, Kuol we spoke about before, got his double, and I think that's something that just wasn't coming off for them before, like those kind of balls from that little half space by Docker. He's so talented, and every time I watch him, I just can't see a thing that he does wrong, right? He's so good at every part of the game, at every aspect. I really just enjoy watching him so much. But he worked it out. Kuol is, looks like he has cemented his place over Edmondson as a striker, and it does look like the tweaks Mark Jackson has made are clicking, kind of playing this one focal point up top with the wingers. Kasevsky just works so hard at being played further up on the field alongside Rue, which was an interesting choice to start with. Being maybe a traditional right back, and albeit an attacking right back. But yeah, he works so hard up and down that right. It gives Docker the freedom to kind of just sit in that pocket and really link up with him and put those balls in from that half space, as I said. And I think Kuol stands out over Edmondson for me even with those type of chances, you'd probably, just looking at the two of them, you'd rather Edmondson on the end of those with his height and aerial ability. But Kuol has that little bit of extra pace just to get beyond the defence there, and will just throw his body, as we said at the start as well, at any chance. And I think that first goal he does really well to generate, enough power and precision to score, because, he's peeling away from the goal. And as a keeper, like that, those are the easiest ones where they kind of always come in loopy and they don't really challenge you. But Redmayne didn't get there, and it found the corner. So that was a really good chance, and that was a clinical header. I think the A-Leagues had that goal over his second in their goal of the week nominees, which was interesting to me, because I thought maybe the second was a bit better worked.
Yeah, me too.
And that was maybe a bit confusing, but they were both excellent goals. And I think we've seen the Mariners just finally execute what they've been trying to. And so it does, in a way, look like it is all coming together. So you've got that exciting attack, along with a solid enough defence to see out the game in this one. So no, exciting times, and I think we may just see that it click for them.
We may just see. I don't know. I can't quite believe that. Maybe it's just purely because of the exposure. They've been battered, a few times in the Champions League Elite, most notably on Tuesday night, really. It was just the most recent one. But they're only goal difference outside the 6 in an A-League context, right? They've only lost one game, and that was to the Phoenix, right? That 3-0 game. But apart from that, they've been undefeated. They have 2 wins now in a row, of course, coming off the bye as well. They had the win against the Jets in the F3 at Unite round. It honestly confuses me, because I guess we've been talking so negatively about them, Jacob, but they positioned themselves well. And if they do have room to grow from here, well, then room to grow means being quite settled in finals football.
I put a lot of that down to Mark Jackson, actually, because I don't think that he was under any false pretenses that they would win the Champions League. He knew that sooner or later they would exit it at some point. Obviously would have hoped to have made the next stage and made a decent run at it, but he knew at some point that the league was going to be in play, and the fact that they have managed to grind out results when they're not playing the best football, I think that comes down to his management of the side to be able to make sure that they're staying focused on the league as well. They're not getting carried away with the fact that they're getting beaten in Asia by better teams. You go, they were the better side on the day. We didn't play well enough. We move on. We've got the league next, right? Let's go out there. Let's get a result. Obviously, 2 wins on the bounce is huge, but it's not like they started off the season, atrociously. Okay, they weren't getting the results that we saw them get at the end of last season, but they weren't getting the results at the start of last season that they were getting at the end of the season previous to that. So, it does seem like a little bit of a cycle. Perhaps they're just one of those sides that's slow starters. It was a problem that Adelaide United had for a while. It's a problem that a number of other clubs have had as well, where it does take them a few games to get into the rhythm of things. And I think for the Mariners, perhaps maybe that's just part of it, right? Is maybe they relax too much on in the off season, right? And it takes them a little bit longer to get back into the game than other sides. I don't quite know what it is, but it does seem like they're starting to get things right. I agree with Will that the one striker is the way to go. I think playing both of them really limited the options that the Mariners had in the final third, because you're playing 2 strikers who there's not a lot of flexibility with either of them. They both can drop a little bit deeper as sort of false nines, but neither of them can get really deep into the midfield to join in build up. And neither of them are going to be your out and out line leaders either, that are going to look to make runs in behind, and try and elevate, rather stretch the field early. I know Kuol did it a couple of times. Will, you obviously mentioned that's the red card coming into play there, and for that second goal it was a nice little dinked ball over the top, but it's not something that he's going to consistently do, right? He's a much more dynamic player than that, and he's going to look to get on the ball perhaps a little bit more. But what it also does, playing with only the one striker, is it gets those wide players into play, gets your fullbacks into play, and gives more space to the central midfield. And if you're going to play Docker in the middle, like Jackson has done the last couple of games, you're going to want to give him as much space and support as he can get to work his magic. And I think that's what that system's done. So I think it's been a combination of experimentation, perhaps not quite working out there. Obviously, yes, the mental side of things with those poor results in Asia, that's going to play a part in it as well. But I think that Mark Jackson has done a really good job in keeping his side focused on the job at hand, which is to make sure that they defend their title in the league. And it was something that he said after the game in Adelaide, actually, was that Obviously, he secured the point in that game, and he was saying, "Yeah, this is what we want to do. We've got to make sure that we can grind out and get these results because they're going to matter later on down the line." And now that they're starting to put games together where they're getting these wins and against good opposition. I mean, Sydney, like you said, Lockie, a lot of us predicting them to finish top and be one of the best sides this season. They've had a few losses now where they've not looked great. And the Mariners able to capitalize here. Obviously, they were playing without a defender for 40 minutes, which that's a big hindrance. But that's the hand that they were dealt, and they held on for a little bit. Then obviously that first goal came in, managed to get the equaliser. Perhaps they're backing it. No, Kuol gets his second. So it was a bit back and forth. But yeah, Sydney are sort of starting to drop now and the Mariners are starting to rise. So it's funny how things play out over it's been 6 games, 7 games. Over the course of a season, we'll see things sort of balance themselves out even more. But it does look like there are signs of life for the Mariners, which is going to be big for those fans out in Gosford because, it did look like for perhaps a while there that everybody was actually going to properly write them off for sure this time. But, as we've come to learn with the Mariners, you can never quite do that because they've always got something up their sleeve.
I'm actually going to challenge you on that Sydney FC call. So let's flip to them for a minute because obviously they're accruing a bit of a red card tally this season as well. You had Max Burgess, who came on only for a matter of minutes in the opening day. Hayden Matthews with the 2 yellow cards. And then, of course, Devonish Mears here. I guess the first question is there a discipline issue? I don't know. Hayden Matthews, we talked about it at the time, just got his Socceroos call up. Is he really trying to prove a point? A kind of a necessary foul. Devonish Mears coming in off the bench here. Well, not off the bench, but you know what I mean. He's the number 2 keeper. Is he trying to do something bold to prove himself? I don't know. It seemed very silly looking at it. These don't feel like a continuous theme for me. They do seem like isolated incidents. But then the second question is then, how has it affected their season? So if you look at the games that they have lost so far this year, they've come from that 97th minute, goal in Auckland, which we talked about, maybe a bit unlucky to concede that. And then their other 2 losses have been first half red cards. So the Bulls and the Mariners, they also both scored when they had 10 men. They overextended themselves in the MacArthur game to give away that second goal as well. That ended up, condemning them to a loss. The one here is just, I think it's a good goal, as you were saying, Will, by Alou Kuol. So you throw in all those contexts. You also throw in the fact that they've had to travel with the ACL2. Personally, with that now clearing up until February, I don't have any worries for Sydney at all. I still have them definitely in my top 2 teams. I think Auckland, just their record is undeniable, right? Yeah. You can debate between the 2 of them, and then Victory are really close on their heels. But for me, Will, I don't actually see much of a worry in the fact that Sydney have lost 3 games so far this season. I think you can actually put them down to isolated incidents, and I think over the course of the season, things will correct naturally.
Yeah, exactly as you said, that these red cards are kind of all different in a way. There's a professional foul from Matthews there in the Bulls game. Burgess just kind of lost his foot and stepped on one of the Wanderers players. So that game was already kind of wrapped up. So that didn't impact the result, obviously. And this one, I mean, this is a nightmare to receive for a keeper, this ball over the top, and it just died in the wind as well. And he probably was right in his decision to come out, but he was just unlucky that the ball held up as much as it did and really made it look bad. There's question marks over red, like maybe a bit whatever. I don't know. It's kind of one of those ones.
I reckon it's a red.
I think it is. But it just sucks. Maybe that's my keeper empathy coming through. Like you hate to cop these ones. But yeah, exactly as you said, this is not emblematic of any bigger issue. There's no, they're the angriest side. They come out and they want to kill you. Yeah. It's nothing like that, right? Like it's just maybe this one is they're victims of playing that high line and how easy that ball was to get in behind was possibly the answer. So maybe in that way they can maybe readjust their defensive line there. But I think Tale was saying that that gives them so much playing that high and winning the ball back from Mariners so far up the field is kind of one of their biggest strengths, really. So he's not going to change that anytime soon. And in the same way that the Mariners now have kind of, don't have to worry about Asia, Sydney FC don't either for the next little period at least. So
Yeah.
I definitely see their results picking up. And I also, I don't know if Tale kind of nailed the substitution. So he brought Wahim off when the red card happened.
Yeah.
Popovic stepped up into midfield, it seemed like, and maybe that just kind of messed with the familiarity. I butchered that one. That they have with each other, right? It kind of, they then didn't obviously prepare for that. To have exactly those players in those kind of areas, and Caceres pushing up, and they just looked a bit, off it, like we saw early in the season that it was clicking straight away, but it's definitely these factors that have stopped it, and it's not a sense of overall kind of there. Nothing to worry about really systemically for them. But yeah, they've still played really well, and it's just, it shows that Tale has said it multiple times now, which is not great that he's had to say it 3 times basically after these red cards, but they will just go for the game no matter what, and it was still open at either end, and I mean, they could have got a result here on another day as well. So no, it's just part of how they play really, and I it's just a coincidence that this trend is occurring.
Can I just add, you raised an interesting point there, Will, about the high line. And that was something that kind of stuck out to me, was that the 2 goals they conceded here weren't symptomatic of playing that high line so much as they were already settled in their defensive shape. And that's not something that we've seen from them this season. A lot of the goals they've conceded have been on the counter-attack, on the break, where, because they commit so many players forwards, they obviously... very difficult for relationist sides to play a rest defense, so you don't have the players back to support in those counter-attacking situations. But in these 2, it was just a case of being unsettled in their actual solid defensive shape. And I do actually agree that I think it could have been that move, that Popovic movement, bringing him a step forwards. It's not somewhere he's ever really played, to be honest. Throughout his career in Adelaide, he was always a central defender, and that was that. So I think perhaps that's where that sort of came in, because the space that Kuol exploited, especially for that second goal, that's right through the heart of the defence, and it was good movement for him to be able to beat. I think it was Matthews that he beat for that second one, but part of that comes down to just a lack of consistency perhaps in that back line. And I found it quite interesting that the 2 goals they did concede were when they were supposedly more settled versus being a little bit more open, and I thought that they did a lot better in transition in this game. So it seems like it's a step forward in that regard, but then perhaps you're right that Corica didn't quite nail, not Corica, Tale didn't quite nail. We talked about him before. Now we're talking about Sydney. I'm sorry, I just reverted to it. But no, Tale didn't quite nail those adjustments to try and see the game out. I definitely agree with that, because it does seem like they managed to play transition defense very well in this game, and then struggled when they were perhaps set up a little bit deeper. So it's something for them to look into and something for them to work on. But I don't expect it to be a problem for them this season too much if they keep things settled at the back and they keep things consistent. But if they're going to make these changes, they've got to be careful about it, because in games like this, that can be the complete difference, and it was here.
I want to ask a question of Melbourne Victory now. I think going to the other side of this big blue divide, I think what their win against Perth Glory on Sunday showed me, Will, is their elite strength in their depth. And I think PK, what he's done with this squad is implemented a system that has really allowed his best maybe 15, 16, 17 players even to slot into seamlessly when asked upon. And he's able to move around some pieces really easily, which I think prevents them from having some of the issues that Sydney FC have felt when they're without the likes of Douglas Costa and Joe Lolly, and they've had to deal with those injuries. So, you have Adama Traore, who came into this game for the injured Casey Boss, obviously more than capable in playing that advanced role, scored a fantastic goal as well, very calm finish to the near post. You've got, Rino Piscopo and Daniel Azani is that inside left winger. Both of those are probably in Victory's top 5 players for the season. I don't know how he begin. We did see Azani play on the right a little bit towards the end of this game. I wonder if Volupele is still injured, then maybe he would consider Daniel out on the right instead of Santos. On that theme as well, he's been spine while Vulu play has been out as well. Not setting the world alight, but he's a more than apt replacement, right? You got Virgos and Fornaroli. Of course, don't forget about Jing Reese as well, and striker. Josh Rawlins is very adept across both centre-back and right-back. Then you've got Fabian Monge in centre midfield as well, who hasn't really had to be used apart from when they've gone to a midfield three late on games to seal it up a little bit. You just have such a deep squad, and these pieces that are coming on, they're solid A-League talent. They're not going to really be too detrimental to the team will. Of course, maybe some of your game changes coming out, but you've got replacements that are very ready to step up. So even if they do cop, 3, 4, 5 injuries, they still have an elite A-League team. And yes, of course, if they come in the same position, then it's a different question, but everyone would have those issues as well. So for me, not just this week, but also the past month as well, dealing with, Piscopo and the likes, it just has shown me just how deep Victory's bench goes. And I think it puts them in very good stead, across the length of a season.
Yeah. And it's not that, you necessarily have this tactical flexibility. I think you have this, it's not like PK is going to make all these changes for a specific game. It's more that you have multiple players that can perform in similar ways, right? So as you said, when you chop and change, it just doesn't feel like really anything's changing. It's they come in, they look the part straight away. Traore plays in a similar way to Casey Boss, as you said, and that gives Victory such a big advantage down that left, where they can really double up and Guerrier can tuck in, and he's good at that. And then Guerrier has that replacement in Rawlins, and who can also play that right back that tucks in, or exactly as you said, right? Like it just gives them that depth. And I think, compared to Sydney's team, maybe it hasn't been tested that much. They've had a few injuries. Obviously, Lolly and Costa missed a couple of games, but then it was during an easier period where they still got results with those other players coming in, maybe. So they haven't been tested in that way. But I look at Sydney's team, and this was definitely true in the season previews. I thought, man, that's a thin squad. Like across the defense, across the attack, it's you do have a big drop off in quality, whereas that just doesn't seem the case for Victory. And it looks like no other competitions, obviously not in Asia or anything, where the squad depth is not really being tested. It's just free to chop and change where he wants, and it's a lethal squad no matter how much how different the lineup is week to week. So it's a dangerous squad that is deserving of where they are kind of on the ladder, and I think they'll definitely be a threat. Just super solid all around, to be honest.
Well, talking about where you are on the ladder, we're 2 months in now. So I want to take a little bit of a look at a couple of teams and just ask the question of if their ladder position does truly reflect their performance levels and maybe where we expect them to be come the end of the season. So starting at the top, and the question is, are they real? And I want to bring up Melbourne City and Adelaide United. So feel free to tackle them together or, weave in and out, whatever you want. Jacob, we'll start with you. Melbourne City, very comprehensive this weekend against the Raw. It makes them 4 wins, 4th on the table with 4 from 4 away from home. I like that little bit of synergy there. But all against the bottom 4 on the table. So Western United, Newcastle Jets, Perth Glory, and Brisbane Raw. So it is a fact that they still have a few more things to prove when they come up against some solid opposition. And hosting Auckland FC next week will be a big part of that. And then Adelaide, their best start in a decade. You got 4 wins, 2 draws, undefeated in 3rd position, of course. They've been going along nicely. They've also had a little bit of that luck that Chiefy's been talking about, the penalty when they played Western, infamous, of course. But Melbourne City and Adelaide United, are they real or are they not?
I mean, they exist. So in that sense of it, they're real.
Are they contenders? Shall I rephrase?
Oh, it's so tough. It's so tough. City, I don't know how deep a run they'd make is the thing with them, right? I'd be pretty confident putting them in the 6 at this point. Yes, okay, they've played the the 4 worst sides in the competition at this point, but you can only play who's in front of you, right? And they managed to get those wins there, which they were kind of expected to do, but they've looked a little bit stop-starty. They obviously the question marks over who's going to be their goal scorer this season. Cohen, obviously, he stepped up in the last game. So did Andreas Kuhn, who had a really good performance.
He's been awesome.
He's looked very, very good for them. Perhaps there's your missing links there, and they'll start firing. But I think from what we've seen from them so far, it's not quite at that point yet to say definitively that top 4 is realistic for them. And then for Adelaide, this is such a tough one because they're undefeated, right? Like there's no two ways around it. Is the fact that 4 wins and 2 draws in 6 games. Okay, yes, I think they've played each of they've not played a single top 6 side, which that's kind of saying something. But again, as I said, with City, you can only play who's in front of you. They struggled against Perth, which is saying a lot because Perth are not very good. They kind of struggled against the Jets. Again, Jets are not very good this season. So there's a couple questions there, but it's also the fact they're able to grind out these results, right? They get a gritty 1-0 win with 10 men. They're able it was an awful performance against Perth, but they held on and got the draw, right? Yes, okay, they've had a little bit of luck, but you also make your own luck, and it comes back, right? Karma, Ben Falami gets the suspension here for a game for a red card, and Adelaide social media is blowing up about it and how it wasn't a red card. If you're going to hit someone in the face, you've got to expect something.
That's the thing, right? Everyone knows that. It looks soft, but everyone knows that.
Yeah. So while it's soft, and I as a player, if I was a player in that situation, I would be aggrieved, right? I would be like, how is this a red card? That's so soft. You've got to also understand that you can't hit someone in the face. So that's sort of the duality of it. Interesting, actually, coming from the review panel was that they classed it differently to the on-field referee. So the referee gave it as violent conduct, and the panel reviewed it and said that it was serious unsportsman conduct, which is why it's only the 1 game suspension for Falami rather than a 1+ extra which would be the case for violent conduct. So perhaps got off a little bit, not got off lightly, but the correct result was reached in the end there from the review panel. But Adelaide now moving on without Falami. Don't think it's a big loss because Austin Iubi will just slot in there anyway, and he's been perfectly fine. Are they real? Look, you all know that I just can never be positive about Adelaide United in any circumstances, and it's even more difficult here because just none of the wins have been convincing. None of the performances have been particularly convincing. If the defensive has played well, it's been the front third that's disappointed and hasn't been able to convert chances. If they're scoring, it's the defense that gives up and doesn't, do their job. If they can get both of these things firing at the same time, there's no reason why top 4 isn't a realistic possibility. But the fact of the matter is that they just can't seem to get that happening, right? It's like when their back's up against the ball, it's fine. They'll defend well and they'll scratch out a result. And if they need to go into overdrive and attack, they'll do that and perhaps concede a few, in transition. But they can't do, both things well at the same time. And for that reason, I think, maybe scraping into 6th as I had them predicted at the start of the season. I don't think they're as bad as some people thought they might be heading into the season, but I don't think they are as good as an undefeated side through the first 6 games of the season.
I think Melbourne City for me are a little bit more real than Adelaide United, because when I look at the 2 teams, Melbourne City have a pretty good defensive record. They've just struggled to score goals apart from 2 specific games against Perth and then here against Brisbane. Whereas you look at Adelaide, they've scored a bunch, but they've also conceded 9, which is on par with Western United, who sit in 10th position at the moment. So for me, the phrase defense wins championships rings very true for me. I think that is a pretty good indicator of long-term performance. So look, both of these teams have proven enough to say they're definitely going to be competing in around finals by the end of the year. But for me, I give a slight edge to Melbourne City.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think they just have shown a little bit more maturity, and when they beat teams, right? Like it is convincing, unlike Adelaide, as Jacob says. I don't know, City. Cohen showed it in this game where he has that calmness just to finish like he did, and I think those players you can just rely on them. They'll have games without output, but City just have these players that those signings, those international signings they make, they all seem to just kind of be the same, kind of not really a high ceiling, not a low, but like low floor, but just consistent, solid. They'll appear when they need to, and then if they're doing this when their striker options are this restricted as well, I think that it can only kind of go up from there. Once they all do come back into the fray. So no, I would agree, and I'd back City a bit more there. Adelaide just feel fragile, right? Like every game, there's nothing, there's no consistency.
It's like a glass cannon. It's like
it is. And I mean, good on them for banking this many points already. But once they do face those tougher challenges, it will be tough to see, I think, where they get the results from. And a lot of these teams around them now in the table, I think will play them off the park when it comes time. So that's my take on Adelaide. I think there's a lot of movement there. If we have Mariners to make the 6, if we were predicting that, one team has to drop off, and for me that'll be Adelaide for sure.
Wow. Okay. Before we move on from Adelaide, I feel like it is our moral obligation to recognise Stefan Mork's podcast. Corner flag is the microphone celebration. Love it. Lovely stuff. Keep it on. We like those kind of stuff. Podcasting fraternity, of course. Now, my second question is, do we put the line through them? So there's 4 clubs I'm putting in this category. Perth Glory. To be honest, I don't know if we need to talk about them too much. I think we've done that plenty. Maybe we focus in on the Brisbane Roar, the Newcastle Jets, and Western United. So Brisbane, look, they were poor again on Friday night. Their defence really couldn't get a hold of City at any point. I think you do have to question the selection of Scott Neville. He was just really slow, wasn't up to the speed of the game. I know they're limited in options, but that didn't land well from the start. Right, he gave away the first ball for the early goal. Mm-hmm. Tommy Waddingham was isolated, which isn't always his fault. You're going to get that with a player like him who's so focused on goal scoring, but they couldn't get him the ball. They do have a soft run of fixtures coming up, so they have a little bit of a reprieve in terms of their fixture list. They got the Wanderers away, but then it is Glory, Western, Mariners, and Jets all in a 4-game period. So if they're to have any hope, they have to use that run as a springboard into the rest of their season. The Newcastle Jets, really worrying. They couldn't show up for the first 10 minutes again. Alex Sushin the way to give away the ball like that in your own box so early on in the game. It just hurts, right? Lockie Rose made his return, which was good. He provided a little bit of a spark, but, missed a really golden chance right in front of the net, and then played half an hour against 10 men and couldn't rescue a result. Western United, I do have a little bit more faith in them. I think similarly to what I was saying about Brisbane, Western have been a little bit of a victim of circumstance. You look at how they've, I think they've had a lot of draws, right? Like 3 draws. A lot of those have come about in unfortunate situations. So I give them a little bit of value there. It's really exciting to see some of their youth coming through. I think we might start to think of them as the kind of Adelaide and the Mariners the last few years. Abel Wallity, I believe it was his first professional start in the A-League, which was really cool to see. Noah Botic, Dylan Leonard, of course, we've talked about. So add in, a proven goal scorer in Hiroshi Basuki. I think they have a lot more potential than these other 3 teams. So I'm not ruling a line through them, but the Jets, the Roar, and the Perth, and it hurts me to do this to the Brisbane Roar, as you know as well. But I am ruling the line through those 3 teams to play finals football this year, Will.
I would probably agree with that. I think Western United have been really unlucky in just really a few moments in these games. As you said, 3 draws. Even in this game against MacArthur, if there was a chance that came in, little cross from the half space again, I think Botic just went over his head. If that was Ibusuki that was far post and Botic was near post, he scores that, right? That's the kind of ball he wants. He would have scored that. They're so unlucky in these little individual moments. Danzaki gets on the end of a good chance, but Sutton does well to come across and make the save. And then another good save in the game from Sutton. It's from Kurto. Sorry. Yes, just these little moments that have meant that they drawn these games instead of winning them, and I think they're never going to play a team off the park and win by a big margin. But we've seen how close they have come to just getting those wins by a goal, and I think they can really turn it around, especially with the youngsters that are coming through. But I would also agree with you with the Brisbane Jets. I feel like I can lump them together a little bit here, where I say I really like the squad. I think they have a lot of potential in the squad, and a lot of young, exciting players that could do things. I see a lot of them, especially maybe for the Jets a bit more, where I see these individual players that if they were dropped in another side, right, in this league under a different manager, I think they would be performing week in, week out, and would be showing what they're capable of. But I just don't know if the right managers are in charge of these teams. I think they're not getting the best out of what they have. And you said it in the Scott Neville selection. I know Zakovic's hands are tied a little bit, but you've got some young centre backs there. You can give them a chance instead. There's just not playing in the way that gets the best out of the squads, and I feel like a lot of players aren't going to hit their ceilings. How things are going at the moment, it feels like maybe these are two managers in Stanton and Zatkovic that are stubborn and maybe not in like in a positive way necessarily, as we say that maybe Tale is to his principles, right? That's why I would lump them together in the way that they have exciting squads, but I just don't see a way, unless there's a change in manager, throughout the season, which is not that common, that these players can excel really.
Jacob, I think I'm just thinking about what Will said. I think Brisbane Roar frustrates me even more because I think look, in their midfield and their front players, right, it just feels like they have the quality to be a lot better than what they have. Yeah. I think Florian Berenguer has been played often on the bench. I think he has a role in the starting lineup. You're playing with Jay O'Shea, Keegan Yelich on the left, Tommy Waddingham. There's a young kid that came on as well. He made a very good impression coming off the bench. It feels like they had more potential. So it's frustrating that they're sitting down on 1 point. But how do you see those four? Are you putting the line through any of them?
Yes, Perth. No, that's not even a question anymore. The Jets looked awful against Adelaide, honestly. Like the first 25 minutes, Adelaide were all over them. And if there was a clinical finisher on Adelaide's side, they would have been 3-0 up by half time and it's game over then and there. They had 30 minutes against 10 men and didn't actually really press the initiative until added time came into play. It just was a really uninspired performance from the Jets. It just was not good. Like you said, Shushniah, Stanton at Unite Round was saying we need more players like him because he's experienced. He's who we look to when we need these results, and he's the one giving the ball away in these scenarios where it creates a goal scoring chance. Goodwin should have put that away. Should have done better with that chance. It's just they look all out at sea. Ryan Scott bailed them out a couple of times. He's obviously a fantastic keeper and we know that, but there's only so much you can rely on your goalkeeper when the rest of the players aren't stepping up, and that's what's happening with the Jets. Rose had the one chance. How has he missed that? I mean, I understand there was a bit of a bubble before it got to him, so he got underneath it, but he's going to be haunted by that one, especially on his first game back. You think that's a perfect way to get back into things. You get a nice goal, you're leveling the game up. You can go from there and try and eke out a result. But he just was completely ineffectual. They couldn't really get him involved. They couldn't really get anybody involved. The midfield was just getting overrun consistently. It just was not a good look for the Jets, and they looked really, really, really bad. Which, this is against an Adelaide side who we've just mentioned are perhaps not as good as their record suggests either. So, the Jets, I'm probably going to put the line through them as well. I don't see them having enough to make finals this year at all. To be honest, they're definitely going to be down in the doldrums. I agree with the both of you that Western, at least there's like signs of a project and a rebuild there, right? You can sort of see what they're trying to do. We've mentioned that they're a very young squad. There's a heavy reliance on them. Was it you, Will, or Lockie that said that they're sort of like Adelaide United in the Central Coast, where it's sort of that style of football and those sorts of players that they're bringing into the squad? Spot on. And you're not going to get results straight away with that. I don't think that there's any reason to be particularly worried about them. Maybe the question then is, is Aloisi the right coach for this sort of a project and for this sort of squad? I don't know. We'll have to see how performances continue and if he can get the best out of players like Abel Wallity, who is a tremendous talent and so dynamic out wide. If he can really get involved in the game and Aloisi can tailor game plans around getting him involved, then there's definitely some really positive signs for them. But Brisbane are just, whoa. Okay, yes, their defense isn't great. And yes, they've got this great talent, but in attack and in the midfield, but they're just not. They're ineffectual and they're not doing enough. And okay, yes, it sucks when you're conceding so many goals and you have to go out and score, 3 a game to even get a draw, sort of thing. But yeah, it's just I've not seen enough from Brisbane to think that they will, be able to sort of get their way out of this bottom 4, to be honest, because I just think that their defense is going to continue to be poor. I think that their midfield, while talented, just doesn't quite have that little something that's going to make a difference in a tight game, right? I mean, Jay O'Shea's a fantastic player, absolutely tremendous ball progression, in and out of possession. He's amazing, but I don't think he's looked as good this season as he did at the start of last season. And that's he was obviously a big part of the reason why, even though they had, 3 different coaches at the start of last season, Brisbane was still able to get a few results, was because of his brilliance. He's not quite had that spark this season. Up front, Waddingham is a tremendous player, but if he's not getting the service, he's not going to be able to get the chances to put it in the back of the net. So yeah, I honestly, I don't think there's enough to put the line completely through them, but I'm halfway through putting the line through the Roar at this point.
All right. Well, before we wrap up tonight's show, I do want to bring something else to your attention that was passed to me by producer Poletti a matter of minutes ago. A story popping up from the Rest Australian on Monday night. The tax office moves to liquidate Ross Peligra's Perth Glory holding company. New Perth Glory owner Ross Peligra, this is from the report, is facing a liquidation push less than 10 months after grabbing the battling soccer club from investment promoter Tony Sage. The Australian Tax Office has asked the federal court to put liquidators into Mr. Peligra's A-League holding company, Perth Glory Football Proprietary Limited, as club officials say they are surprised by the attack. Chief Glory executive Anthony Radich told the West Australian the club had not received any correspondence or notices from the ATO on the matter until Friday. Mr. Radich said it was a matter for Mr. Peligra's flagship company, Peligra Group, to sort with the tax office, as he expected it to be resolved shortly. Glory's Fremantle-based administration then released a statement saying, quote, "It's suspected this issue may be related to the previous ownership." So this has just come across us very quickly, so the details are scarce. But the federal court records show the tax office lodged the liquidation application on Wednesday and is due up for a first mention in front of a federal court registrar on February the 5th. So it sounds as if, and this is just literally me reading from the report, that they seem quite surprised by what is coming across their desk, and hopefully it is a matter from the previous administration, but also, if the Peligra Group now owns not just the assets, but also the liabilities and the obligations of the previous administration, I guess that might be an issue. Jacob, I guess you're the closest thing we'd have to an expert in this regard. Do you care to make any input here?
Well, sort of sprung that on us here with little idea that this was going to happen, obviously, because the news is just broken. But I mean, it's not ideal. Typically, the ATO only really push for liquidators when things are in dire circumstances. That the ATO and sort of their counterpart ASIC a little bit of sort of toothless tigers at the moment, especially when it comes to corporate enforcement and things like that. So, it is a bit of a surprise to see them pushing so hard for this, and perhaps quite telling that there's a lot more going on behind the scenes than, all this this happy posturing that Peligra has put out since he's purchased the club of, bringing the club back into relevancy and, we're going to set up these plans for the future, etc., etc. And perhaps he's not quite been as transparent as people think he has been about what's going on. And you're right, Lockie, if they, did also acquire the liabilities and things of the previous administration, that could play into it. But you're not going to make a purchase of a football club and not do your due diligence in that sort of thing and know, hey, we're going to be incurring X amount of debt. We've got to make sure that we are able to pay it off, or at least show that we're capable of paying it off, so that we can avoid this sort of thing happening. The fact that it's targeted at the holding group makes me believe it is probably something to do with the previous administration. It's not targeted at the Pelligra group itself. So it's probably not an issue with the finances of Ross Pelligra, but rather something to do with the football operations side of thing. Obviously, we'll know more as the story unfolds. And obviously it's a big wait now until, early February before it does actually get heard in the federal court. I'm actually surprised that they've managed to get a hearing that soon, because court since COVID, the court backlog has just become insane, and there's been a merger with the federal court and the family court as well, which has made things even worse because the workloads are higher. But the fact they managed to get a hearing so early is actually quite surprising as well. But hopefully this is just a case of formalities, and they were sort of perhaps expecting something like this to happen, and that they've got contingencies in place to be able to deal with this, because while it does say that it's come as a surprise to them. Like I said, you're not purchasing a football club without doing your due diligence. So you'd hope that they'd at least have thought that there was a possibility that something bad might happen down the road, and that they'll have to prepare for that.
Yeah, all right, fascinating. Well, that's all the information we have for now. Just a reminder, if you are liking the content, we're available across YouTube and Spotify. Those are our preferred platforms if you care, I guess. But we appreciate all your support. Please do like, comment, follow, all that stuff. We appreciate you as always. But that will do for this episode of the Round Ball Australia podcast. Will Booth, really appreciate you hopping on tonight. It's a pleasure as always.
Thank you. Yes, very fun. Thank you.
Jacob Stevens, Your Honour, appreciate your expert insight.
Yes, that's me, Round Ball Australia's legal expert.
Don't say that too loudly. Thank you everyone very much for listening. We'll be back on Friday as always. We thank you for listening. Goodbye.